Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 242. And in today's episode, we're just going to talk a little bit about list maintenance. So, this is one of those things that they definitely don't talk about when you're getting into safety. They talk about helping others and preventing hazards and injuries, and you're just going to be there to help people. And when you get into it, of course, you realize that I got to come up with a tracking system. I got to come up with something that works, that when I know a person is hired, they change jobs and all that. And like all systems, we have to depend on others. So we looked at folks and human resources and that kind of stuff then. And let's just take example that a person is being hired to be a chemical operator. We'll just say, this is a totally fictional, place. So chemical operator. So they come in, they go through new hire orientation and all that's real easy to do. And then that's when we start to look at the list portion out there then. So we then get them on the head count list. We then go through and make sure that they know exactly where to go when there's a building evacuation, shelter in place, all that stuff. So we're checking off boxes. We're making sure these folks are ready to go. Along with chemicals, they're going to get hazard communication, respiratory. So now we're okay. So now I got to get them fit tested for a respirator. So I got to get the physical, the spirometer. I got to go through the various sizes of respirators. Got to break out the port account machine, all that. So now we're adding to the list as time goes on. Then maybe they're working with something that falls underneath a certain OSHA standard. So let's say that now it's lead, chromium, arsenic, something like that. So now I'm adding it to that list, and I'm making sure that they don't go over the action level. So now I'm getting the sample in, and I'm getting, just so the list goes on and on and on. And if you had a small site, it wouldn't be so bad. But when you start to really get a lot of folks going, it's reasonably hard to keep a good, accurate list of who, what, and where has to happen. So I have tried a couple of software packages, and not that they've been bad, but I found that given the initial upfront work I had to do, and then they did a good job of doing a little calendar function, and that kind of stuff, then that the bang for the buck was just not there. And I just haven't found anything yet that's really good out there. So a lot of this, what we're talking about today, is we have to have a system that works for us. Uh, there's probably a really good system out there, and I haven't come across it. There's probably something really good that somebody right now listening to this has come up with, and they just think, oh, it's just something that I just came up with and created and all that stuff then. So there's a lot of great things out there. So in the safety field, we should be doing what we can to share these really good things with other facilities too. Um, and also with list, there's a time where we're adding and subtracting to the list too. So let's just say that the chemical operator that we have that was hired in the previous example is actually a computer whiz. And he just wanted to get into the company, get his foot in the door. So he goes through all that training and all that kind of stuff then. Well, now there's a job open in the, let's call it the computer department. So he then transfers to the computer department, where now he's going to do things like ergonomics. We're going to look at setting up his desk the proper way. We're going to go through all that. So now we have them changing jobs, another set of lists, another set of things that have to be done. And in an ideal world, we have a lot of supervisors helping out too, helping to keep track of everything too. But I also know that as much as we like to think they're focused on safety as much as we are, they're also worried about production and cost and maintenance and all the stuff too. So I think we all have to work together as a team to really make sure these lists happen, which then gets back to the example. We now have an opening in the chemical department. We now have a new person hired. So we then go through that whole HAZCON, respiratory protection, let's get you on the headcount list. So there's a lot of list in the field of safety. I haven't found a good one yet that really helps out, and so I think I've done a adequate job of coming up with something that works for me. Super hesitant about sharing it with others because it's so specific to the operations that I'm tackling out there. I'm not sure it would really be of relevance to everybody. People could take from it as they saw fit, of course. But part of the thought exercise, of course, anybody who's listening to this who does software things, so come up with something, help us in the safety field keep track of these things. So there's a lot of fantastic software out there that's going to do the SDS and sampling data and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But there's always the admin side of who's going to scan it in the scanner, who's going to enter it in, who's going to archive it, who's going to. So, not that the work is not there, it is reduced. It's just not reduced to a level that everybody would say, I got to jump on board, I got to get on this then. So, at this point, I think I'm just starting to drone on. So, this was more of a thought exercise here. How are we keeping a list? And maybe what you don't have is a list. You actually have a training department. Some places have a training department, and you work with the training department and say the following person gets the following things, and it's up to the training department to let you know when it's time for these things to come due. Um, that's a great system, but if they tell you the same day a person expires, well, that's probably not a really good system out there. So with that, let's just wrap it up. Episode 242 is complete. Today we sat down and talked about in safety how we're working with a lot of lists out there, and it sounds easy. We hire somebody, we get them on a list, but there's always that maintenance aspect that somebody somewhere has to go back and enter in the admin data. Doesn't mean that it's not productive work, but in an ideal world, we focus a lot more on reducing hazards, reducing chemical exposure, and that kind of stuff, as opposed to sticking things on a list then. So thank you. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Have a safe day.